Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Rock Your Reinvention. I'm super excited about our guest today. If you've never joined Rock Your Reinvention before, this is the show that gives you all the tips and tricks you need to reinvent your life in 30 minutes or less by interviewing other amazing women who have been there, done that. So you don't have to figure out the hard way. You could just learn from what other people have done and get the courage that you need to step out and make that change. So today we are welcome the amazing Debra Solomon, and I'm going to let her just introduce herself. So hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Kind of passionate about change and kind of the possibilities in our lives, right? And kind of pursuing those. So I am Debra Solomon. I don't want to really say I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I feel like I've kind of learned to be that a little bit through different scenarios. But I was in corporate for almost a decade and then made a big life change and opened my own retail business with my husband and owned that for about 4 years. And then sold that off and transitioned into real estate full time. So been through a lot of different changes.
And you're based out in Phoenix now, right?
I'm in Phoenix now. Yeah. So I have actually moved 6 times. So started in New York, and then I was in Florida for a short time, and then Georgia. I started my corporate career in Georgia, and then relocated with my company to Texas, relocated to New Mexico with them, and then started this whole kind of reinventing myself with new possibilities, a lot because of the influence of my husband, I will say. He's a big influence in my life of dreaming big and doing bigger, I guess, I should say. But yeah, that kind of started in New Mexico, and then we just came out to Phoenix about 2 years ago.
I love that. I love that you're giving your husband kudos. And I think we should all be in relationships where the other person brings something to the table, right? And pushes us to be the best version of ourselves. So thank you for sharing that.
I think too many women try to bear the burden of everything a lot of times on their own. And it's just, we need a good support system, whether it's another woman or it's a family member or a spouse or, just a really close friend or confidant. We don't do it alone. Most people we're not really self-made. I kind of hate that term self-made because there's always people and things in our life, influences that help us get to where we are. Yes, we do a lot of the work and we have to dream it up and we have to put in the time and energy, but I don't really believe that anyone is self-made. We have so many people around us helping us, supporting us, giving us an opportunity that maybe we wouldn't have otherwise because of our network or whatever. So it really does take a village for all of us to get to where we want to be.
Oh yeah, nobody gets to the top alone. And I always say there's no such thing as an overnight success. People just see it sometimes and they think it's an overnight success, but they don't see all the grinding and everything that happened behind the scenes. So
no, it's it's kind of like an iceberg, right? It's like, all of a sudden we hear about this, famous so-and-so that, got this big break and they're making all this money and their company took off, but they don't show, we didn't hear about them 7 years ago when they were living out of their car trying to get this going, they just, and that's why it seems like overnight, is because we highlight success, right? So we pay attention to those messages and those things. So we only catch on to it once it's bright and shiny. It's like the shiny object syndrome, it's just, we only catch on to things once they're kind of wrapped in a pretty little package. But yeah, there's so much behind the scenes and there's so much that we go through to get to where we are. So
yeah, and I want to talk about some of this behind the scenes of your own success. So you reinvented your life obviously a few times. I mean, you just kind of gave us the Cliff Notes version, but I want to start with this first career move. So take us back to those days of being an insurance claim agent. And what was that moment where you're like, I need a change. I need to reinvent my life. What was going on for you?
I don't think there was one moment, right? It builds. And I think most of us in corporate to kind of understand that slow kind of grind and putting our time in, right? But there was definitely a tipping point where I realized that there was only so much opportunity that was being provided to me. And it was no longer actually about the work I put in. I was doing all of the work. And it came to a point when it was my second time going for a promotion within the organization. And I felt like I've been in a position to kind of start being groomed by the management to be that next person to get that promotion. And so I felt really good about where I was. But right before the interviews got going for the position, we had a big management shift in the office. So the managers that I had been being groomed by left. And they got promoted, went on to another opportunity. So a new manager came in, and suddenly their perspective of who was the right person changed, right? So overnight, nothing that I did and nothing that I could have done differently, my opportunity kind of went out the window. So even though I probably was a good person for the job, it wasn't provided. The opportunity was kind of taken away from me. So then I was like, well, where does this leave me? What do I do now? How many more years am I going to be in a position until this next opportunity comes up? And I wasn't really willing to wait anymore or let that be in somebody else's hands, right? That decision. I wanted to be in a position where if I worked for something, I could attain it without anybody else's permission to do so. And the corporate environment just didn't really provide that. It doesn't. So that's when I had the conversation with my husband about like, what am I going to do? What do I do? And he was in a career where he was getting to the end of his initial career, and he was going to need to transition into something else.
Yeah, because he's an athlete, right? So a lot of people who have these physical careers, right, their body, they can only do it for so long.
Only for so long. So we knew that he was going to need to retire within a few years. And he was kind of like, look, I don't want to be that athlete that can't give it up because I have nothing else to do. Right. So he wanted to start ahead of time on something that helped him to kind of transition. So that's when we got this bright idea to open up this retail center. It was a wellness center, so it was around the sports environment. We had a lot of influence and connections in the sports world. And it was an opportunity for me to be a business owner and a leader. And we started this industry. We were the first ones in the state of New Mexico to open up a cryotherapy. The industry did not exist in the state. So we were doing something kind of big and special. And we opened that business. And we did. We ended up owning it for about 4 years. But that was really the first transition where I was like, okay, I'm doing it all on my own.
Yeah. And cryotherapy was basically like an alternative to ice baths, right? So you kind of stand in something almost like a tanning booth, and it gets super mega freezing cold, and it has all these health benefits.
Right. So it's really good for autoimmune diseases and deficiencies, inflammation in the body, reducing that, all sorts of things that it's good for. Obviously, athletes did use it for recovery and healing of their muscles and things. A lot of people recovering from surgery used it. So I loved that because I had that education piece, right? When somebody would come through, I was educating the community on this new industry. And it was really fun. We enjoyed it. I learned a lot as a business owner and a leader. I learned a lot about what I also didn't like in business. And I think that's a big lesson too, right? We learn the great things we learn the things that we're good at and we enjoy. And we also learn the things that I don't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole again.
Yeah, for sure. But before we move on to my next question, I want to just flag this for a second. You were saying, look, I just don't want to have my career in someone else's hands, right? And there's so many things that we have to deal with in corporate, and office politics is often one of the biggest pain points for people. And you can complain about them all you want, but they're not going away. It doesn't matter where you work, you're going to have office politics. And so at some point, you just have to make a decision. Do I want to deal with this anymore? Am I willing to wait for the next promotion or until this company can afford or is willing to pay me what I'm worth? Or do I want to go out and create my own success and do something different? So I love that you didn't stay stuck and you were like, no, let's just go try something else. I am smart enough, talented enough to figure this out. Right. And you had never done this before. It's not like you had a background in cryotherapy or owning a retail shop. You were just like, did your research and dove in. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a big thing is just, being we in our corporate careers, right? We spend so much time learning about the company, investing in a certain position, or they always say, start acting like you're in the next position that you want ahead of time. Yep. And we spend so much energy doing that. But then when somebody's like, wait, you want me to go learn I don't have any experience in that. Well, if somebody came to you in your corporate job right now and said, hey, we'd like to offer you this position, would you just be like, I don't have experience in that? No, you'd be like, you would say yes and find out how to do it later, right? Yep. And I think it's the same thing in entrepreneurship is that you need to be willing just to say yes and figure it out as you go. You're never going to have it all figured out. And if you wait until that moment, you'll be waiting forever. Like we never have it all figured out. We're always constantly learning and evolving.
I remember one of my favorite conversations with you when you were pretty early on in the cryotherapy, because I couldn't fathom leaving corporate at this point. Like I was still making that money and like I was sort of addicted to that whole corporate ladder thing. And I remember you saying like, and I don't remember the exact number, but you're like, I made $2.56 an hour this month, but my God, I've never been happier. And I just remember thinking like, okay, like A, that's amazing. B, I don't think I could do that. But just talk to me about how you shifted your worth from your paycheck. And maybe you never saw your worth as your paycheck, but I always identified with the more money I'm making in my paycheck, the more valuable I am as a human being. Not true, but it's what the mindset was, right? That's the thought. And I think that's one of the biggest changes for women who want to leave corporate. They're like, or even take a step down or move to nonprofit or like go become a teacher or just do something different. All of a sudden they're like, wait a second, my worth has always been my paycheck. I'm not going to be making that much money. I don't know if I can let go of that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to be insensitive to the realities of financial security and the financial need that we have to pay our bills, right? Like, we can't, most of us can't live off of $2.56 an hour.
Right.
I think it's and I will not say my worth was never really as much in the number on my paycheck. It was more about the responsibility, right? Like I wanted to be issued something that was important. Some sort of responsibility that if, nobody else could handle it. It was Debra's the girl, right? Like she knows we're going to give this special thing to Debra because she's the one that can handle it. So it's very fed off of just being responsible for something important. So the money shift wasn't as big of a deal, but I am super risk adverse initially just by nature, which a lot of people are like, you quit your job. How can you be risk adverse? But it's the realization that we are all at risk of something. Like look at the layoffs happening right now in the news.
Oh yeah. We have a bunch of people from this group actually who have recently been impacted.
Right. So you've been sitting there. It really is kind of a false sense of security, that this job is going to be there forever. And in the realization too, like we don't get pensions anymore. We don't get these things where it's worth putting up with 30 years of nonsense because we're going to be taken care of for the 30 years after we decide to retire.
Sure.
Our realities are just different. So it's kind of shifting to say, hey, there is a risk in me quitting and going and doing this thing. And, maybe I won't have any customers. Maybe it won't work out. Maybe I'll go into debt. But it's also the realization, they could come in and fire me tomorrow. And then what? Then I'm scrambling anyway to go find something else to provide. So would I rather be in control of that process or not? And for me, the control of I can kind of lead my life where I see it going was much more empowering than being some sort of valuable resource at some organization.
Yeah. And I think it's the mindset shift too, right? There's always a tendency, I think, especially as women, to do the what if game and have all of it be negative. Like, you're like, what if I don't have any clients? What if I go into debt? What if, what if, what if? And it's like, but what if you're wildly successful? What if you made more money doing this than your corporate job could ever pay you, because you become
Right.
like a market of one and you're so specialized?
Right.
Like, there's so many positive what ifs that we forget to look at those, and we stay stuck in the negative what ifs.
Absolutely. I mean, the possibilities are endless. And I think the thing to really understand, like, our lives and our careers are fluid. They're
Yeah.
constantly changing. So it's important sometimes to roll with that tide, and it's sometimes important to swim against that tide. And sometimes you have to have a checking of your values and looking at your life and your career. They'll oftentimes be out of alignment, right? Because things are so fluid, we have to constantly recheck ourselves and bring those things back into alignment. And so sometimes that means a career change, sometimes that means a life change, a location change. But with that fluidity comes that freedom that we so much want. And the opportunity is on the other side of that. And just kind of leaning into that and being okay, getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, and believing in yourself that, like you said before, we will figure it out. We always do. We always do. And if you even look at your corporate career, how many times have you been challenged? How many times have you been up against the wall, either with a management issue or you maybe got a project that you kind of failed on or didn't perform the best on. And we always come out on the other side because we're resourceful and we're able. And you just have to use that energy in a different way.
Yeah, and I didn't pay you to say this, but you brought up values, which is great. And that's one of the key things that we're doing inside Success Without Sacrifice. So applications are closing on Friday. If you didn't apply yet, you want to get in, because this is exactly the alignment piece, right? And making sure that our goals align to our values, and that our priorities align, and that we're delegating the stuff that doesn't, that we don't need to be doing, and all those things to help us create this balanced life and get to the point where we're really doing the thing that makes us tick, and we're doing it with integrity. So,
right. And I think it's important too to understand, like, it's okay if you don't know what that is yet. And so much of us, we see these women, right? And they're just so passionate about X. And we're like, I don't have that in my life. I don't have that like burning passion for X, Y, Z. But I also think that comes from being stifled a little bit if you are in corporate, or you're kind of being told what should give you passion, right? Or you only have so much time to pursue. When you start to break out, I know when I kind of had this mental shift to start looking outside of corporate and creating something on my own, the creativity that started, I'm like, where is this coming from?
right.
It was always there, but it was so stifled because corporate would say, no, we can't do this, or no, we can't do that, or it's not utilizing all of my skills. So once I'm breaking out of that, it's like all these things, and you just become more creative and you kind of fill those shoes.
Yes.
And so I once you start exploring, you'll be surprised how much kind of comes your way and shows you just all the skills and abilities that you have.
Oh, that is so true. I love that. So also, if you all have questions as we're going through this, feel free to pop them in the chat. I'm in StreamYard, so if you're watching from Facebook, make sure you put your name, or you allow StreamYard to see the comment. Otherwise, I just won't know who's asking it. But so now you're in cryotherapy. You did that for about 4 years. Like, this was your big dream. You were loving it. You were so happy. And then there was a tipping point again, and something needed to shift, and you wanted to go into this whole real estate side of things. So just talk to us a little bit about what happened. Where was it? Were you sad to leave cryotherapy? What were the emotions that went along with that? And how did you ultimately make the decision to go into real estate?
Yeah. So while we were owning the, I had my real estate license. It was something I was always interested in. So I had it. I didn't really utilize it because the cryo business took so much of my time. But again, as my husband was this was a couple years in, really close to his retirement, something we'd always talked about doing was flipping a house. And so we ended up flipping a house while we were still owning the cryotherapy business. And we loved it. We absolutely loved it. Well, so we're like, okay, we could just still kind of do this on the side. Well, the big change for us was when we had our daughter. So, the first one was like, the first change from corporate to cryo was career motivated, right? I wanted something different on my career. This one was a total personal shift. My priorities changed from being this career-driven corporate person, business owner, to a mom, and wanting and needing to spend time. And the 6 days a week at the cryo shop just was not allowing that to happen. So it was a very difficult decision. Again, this was an industry that we brought to the state, and it was still new. And that was like kind of like my first baby. Right?
Yeah.
How do I let this go? I built this from the ground up, and I didn't even know if we could sell it. Is it valuable enough at this point to even be sellable? But we explored that, and we were able to sell it. And it just gave me the freedom for my daughter. I was like, I can't have her being raised in this shop here all day, every day, and it just.
Well, and I remember you saying too, like your vision, your ultimate vision for this business was that you would then step back from the day-to-day operations and you just kind of be collecting that paycheck every month, right? And you hire somebody to run the shop and they're doing it, but you had a lot of challenges and people wanted you, right? They were like, no, where's Debra? I'll come back when Debra's in. And it's like, you couldn't step away.
I could, the business, and I think part of that is just it's my personality and who I am, that I'm just, the business became me.
Yeah.
And so I would try to hire people to do what I was doing, and my customers, they'd come in and they'd say, oh, Debra's not here. Well, when is she going to be back? And they're like, I can do it. I can do this for you. And they're like, no, that's okay. I'd rather just wait for Debra. And it's like, I'm never going to be able to leave this place. And I mean, it was so wonderful, the connections that I had. And it was, obviously a little bit of a boost to my self-confidence that like, I'm connecting with people and people enjoy me, and I'm attracting the right energy and all that kind of stuff. But nobody opens a business to become a business owner. They do it for freedom. In the beginning, you get less freedom, right? Entrepreneurs, they leave the 40-hour jobs so they can go work 80 hours a week, right? It's kind of that insane shift. But ultimately, you're hoping that it gives you more freedom in the end. And I just wasn't getting that. It was like I was getting further and further and further from that freedom. And so, it was just a reality that, look, I don't think we can ever be the owners and have be hands off of this. Yeah. And I also learned about myself that I have a hard time being hands off because I have a trust problem with employees. And that's okay. Like, it's good. And I'm learning to try to develop that a little bit, but it's challenging, especially when you're paying somebody, an hourly wage that you're getting a certain type of employee. And that's something that I realized I honestly never want to own that type of business again. And so I definitely don't look at it as a failure, because there's been a lot of opportunities that have come across my desk since then that I have said no to out of a place of power, not out of a place of fear, but a place of power to say that will not serve me.
Yep.
I know that business is going to require me in a certain capacity and to deal with employees and these types of things that I don't enjoy and I don't want to deal with. And so it's allowed me to say no. And it's so empowering when you can say no to things that won't serve you.
And I'm working on that now in my business. I have such a heart to serve. And I keep saying yes to speaking engagements in front of like entrepreneurs and like But that's not like my core market. My core market is not female entrepreneurs, right? It's people who maybe are in corporate and want to become an entrepreneur, or people who are in corporate and want to get more balance, but it's not the woman who's already said, yep, I want to go do this, and is now is doing the entrepreneur thing. And so I really have, now I'm like, okay, I got to go back to the drawing board. I got to create that business plan. I got to stay true to it and really figure out, like, where do I want to be spending my time and energy so I can have the biggest impact? Mm-hmm. And you're right. It's not a failure. It's that learning. And we can't learn if we don't put ourselves out there and try some things and really be honest with ourselves about how things are working or if it resonates with us.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So, personal question for you. What's it like working with your spouse? Because I don't know if I could do that.
I don't know some days if I can either. Let's be honest.
Okay.
It has its pros and it has its cons, right?
Sure.
We are truly, you want a partner in life. I mean, we're building a life in work and outside of work, right? Like, and it's all kind of encompassing. So it can be really fun when you do have those successes, because you are celebrating alongside, your closest person and your closest supporter. But when there are problems in business, I mean, it's at home too. Like, it's hard to separate that sometimes. Sure. I think it also takes a certain personality. And so not everyone could work with their spouse. I think we're really fortunate that we have the personalities that we do and that we enjoy a lot of the same things. But yeah, it can be challenging. But I think we check in with each other a lot, of okay, how are you feeling about this? Or should we just talk a lot, and, listen a lot and try to, be easy. But yeah, it's not always easy. But again, I think it's important to find people, whether it's your spouse or it's somebody else. It's just important to find somebody that you can build with, that your values are aligned, but also that push you in a different way, right? Like, he's the big dreamer. Always has been. He's always believed anything is possible. He told me long before he won an Olympic medal that he was going to win an Olympic medal, and nobody else believed it.
Right.
Nobody else believed it. We were like, okay, sure. Good luck with that. And then, so when he believes in the big picture and the dream, I'm much more of the planner. So I think we complement. He's like, this is my dream. He has no idea how to get there. He just knows he's going to. And I'm kind of the one that can help with the action steps. So also, we complement each other that way. So
that's big, having that like balance, right? That yin and yang. And then you also, I think, can stay in your own lane. Like, hey, this is kind of your vision. You do the visionary, you do this, and I'm going to focus over here and be running these plans. So, and then you can check in together as you go along. So you're not stepping on toes.
Right. I mean, we definitely have like our roles that have somewhat just kind of happened naturally from our personalities, because he's the dreamer, like in real estate, and because he's such a talker. He is an extrovert. He will talk to anybody and everybody. And so he's much more of like the acquisition guy. He can find the deal. He can go talk to somebody, drum up some deal out of thin air, right? Because he's just that guy. And then I'm the person behind, like, running the numbers and what will this look like? And so it just works well. But yeah, it's fun.
Cool. So 2 more questions. We have 2 minutes. This went super fast. Thank you so much. It's so much great stuff. I could just talk to you for an hour. So juggling being a parent, right? Because you said you have a daughter. She's now what, 4 or 5?
She's 4.5.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So almost 5. Yeah. And how do you do it? Like, I've seen her come to like your houses that you're flipping, and she'll just be like hanging out while you're flipping the house and stuff.
Yeah, she loves it. Like, she knows how to use a stud finder, and she knows how to use the measuring tape. Like, she loves it. So, it's, she's just growing up around it. And I think it's really important. What a blessing. Like, I mean, back in the day, we used to love, take your daughter to work day. Like, it was so cool to kind of see that different environment, and she gets to see it every day. She definitely talks like an adult because of it. She hears a lot of adult conversations. But it's great to be able to bring her into what we're doing, because it's hard. Like, these are not standard hours. And we're fortunate to have her home with us a lot of the time. And my business doesn't really stop, right? I can get a phone call from real estate anytime. I don't know. So being able to just bring her along for that, it reduces my mom guilt, because I'm not gone all the time or taking time away from her. She can be kind of inclusive in it. And we try to have fun with it, so it's a balance. There are times where I have to realize, okay, she needs me. I can't do work right now.
Right.
Obviously, when she goes to school part-time in the mornings, like that's my work time that I can really, and then the other times, like I said, stuff's just fluid. So we just kind of have given her the idea that, this is life, and we just kind of roll with the punches and go with what comes. But she really enjoys it. It's fun to see her in her envisioning. And we were hanging up something yesterday and we were having a problem, and she's like, I am mad at those contractors. They did not do this right, and so it is really funny to see kind of how she's learning about it all.
Yeah. And I think it just gives other people hope too, that you don't have to become an entrepreneur and not be able to devote time to your family either. Because we always hear about those entrepreneurs who then they're just like basically married and, birthing their business. But you've really done a great job of juggling it all and making it all fit. So,
well, and I think the important thing too is like a lot of people have this like do whatever it takes mentality, right? Of like, especially like in career, I'm going to do whatever it takes to be successful. And then they get successful, but they've abandoned all these other parts of their life. And really, then they just end up having burnout. So I think it's important early on to create constraints that keep you honest and keep you kind of checked into the other areas of your life. And a lot of people think that constraints are going to constrain your business, or your career. But in reality, if you create those boundaries, it's going to create an opportunity for you to be better at problem solving, come up with creative solutions, learn how to delegate, and it will actually make your business or your career flourish rather than constrain it. So I just always set boundaries and, create those kind of systems for yourself.
Sure. So last thing, if you could say one thing to the women who are watching and they know they want to make a change, but they don't know how to get started, what would you say?
Oh gosh, there's so much. But I think one of the things is like, you have to understand if you're not willing to sacrifice something for what you want becomes your sacrifice. So if you want a certain vision for your life, but you're not willing to maybe give up a little bit of that paycheck or give a little bit of the time up or do something, then that what you want gets further and further. Right. Yeah. So you're sacrificing something no matter what decision you make. If you stay where you are, that's not fulfilling one aspect of your life or some vision, you're already making a sacrifice. So just realize that, it's more empowering to pursue the true thing that you want. And realizing
because then I would argue you're not even sacrificing something because you have made a priority. So it's not even really a sacrifice anymore,
Right. I think it's just, and it's finding those people and those communities and those resources to kind of help you get out of your own head, right, and out of your own way. And look, like I said earlier, I am not saying that there are realities to life, but there's always a way to figure it out. And maybe it'll take you, maybe you have a 3-year exit plan. Maybe you have a 10-year exit plan. Like, I don't know what it looks like for you. But what are the areas where you can make some sacrifice to ultimately get this other thing that you want? And it is focusing on the possibilities and the positive what ifs, like you had said earlier too.
Yeah.
Like, what if I am wildly successful? What if this is more popular than I ever could have imagined? What does my life look like? And what does that allow me to do for myself and my family and my community? I think there's so much. I mean, we could go on, like you said.
I know. So much good wisdom, but I know everyone has got a lot of things on their plate today. So I'm going to let everybody get back to it. Of course, if you have not checked out Success Without Sacrifice yet, that's what this is all about, allowing you to reach whatever success looks like for you without sacrificing all the good stuff in life. So go to KarenFreeland.com/success, check out the program and apply before Friday so you can get in for our February cohort. Debra, this is amazing. Some of you may or may not know, but she's actually my sister. So we could just talk all day long. She is one of my biggest, board of advisor members, if you will. Like I call her all the time when I have business questions or I need that moral support. So if you don't have someone in your network, I'm sure Debra would be happy to be that for you and get to know her in this Facebook group because she has a ton of wisdom to offer. So where can people find you?
So the best thing, Instagram, Debra Solomon, Facebook, connect with me. We can get in the group. I can give my information out. I'm always available for questions. I love jumping on Zoom calls too for mentorship or whatever. So happy to kind of help people think through things and next steps. So
awesome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. And we'll let you get back to building your empire.
Okay, let's do it.
Have a great day.
You too.